And now it's my turn. It's really great to be here. Oh, geez. I looked to the choir because those people became dear friends when I sat there. So I thought I'd let you know just a little bit about what I've been up to since I left in the first Sunday of February 2020, I believe, was my last Sunday. And I had planned to take about an 8-week sabbatical to transition from becoming a part of the choir and being the pianist to becoming a member of the congregation. That was 2020, right? And you know what happened in March. So that 8 weeks stretched out a long time. Well, I'm here today. As Mark Twain put it, the reports of his death had been greatly exaggerated. Well, the reports of my absence may have been greatly exaggerated. I've heard from several of you, I heard you became a Baptist. Some of that is true. I thought you were moving to Alabama. It didn't happen. So here's what I've been doing. I'm not a Zoom worshiper. I'm sorry. I can't do it. Corporate worship for me is corporate worship, and I need to be with others when I worship. Either that or I need to be at the top of a mountain worshiping with the trees and the creatures that dwell in the forest. And so I actually had a long list of churches I wanted to visit in that 8 weeks, some of which took me back to my roots because being a Unitarian Universalist takes you away from some of the ritual of worship in a traditional Christian setting. So that long list, of course, was still Zoom worship. But about halfway through the pandemic, one of the local churches started having regular worship service inside their sanctuary. And this was a church that had really been brave. There is a Baptist church over on Shallow Road, Townview Baptist Church. And sometime in 2019, a gay family, a group of 3 children and a husband and his husband, came to the pastor and said, "Will you let us become members of your church?" And the pastor, once he got up off the floor, said, "I don't know. Let me ask my board of deacons." So he took this to the board of deacons, and they unanimously voted to allow this family to become part of their congregation, knowing the consequences would be great. The church was split in 2, and 3 months later, they were ousted from the Southern Baptist Convention. This did not deter their efforts to become more wide-ranging. This was already a congregation that had allowed women to become deacons. They had ordained women who went to seminary and went other places. And were on the edge of being acceptable to Southern Baptists in the first place. And now they dared to accept gays, lesbians, and trans. And so I decided to visit I visited first on Pentecost Sunday. And when the scripture readings were read, people from 5 different countries stood on the dais and read the scripture in each of their native languages. I was quite frankly blown away, because these were people who were working hard to become part of the 21st century, and who were working even harder to make sure that everyone felt welcome. Their sign reads, "Y'all are welcome." And they are. I've never felt like anybody, when I visited there, I never felt like anybody wasn't welcome. I talked to the minister. I told him where I stood theologically, and I said, "You may not want me here, but I sure do like visiting." And he said, "We'll take you wherever you are." Really? And so I visit there occasionally when I'm not with Barry Whittemore, my partner. We visit 2 Universalist churches. Usually twice a month, we go to 2 different ones. They only meet once a month. And there are really Universalist churches here in Georgia. One is in Winder, Georgia. One is in Cannon, Georgia. Mostly they're family churches, and I play the piano and Barry preaches. Isn't that sweet? But we enjoy helping these congregations stay alive. They're mostly family congregations, and we both feel a calling to work with them. And on Sundays, when none of that is happening, I'm usually traveling, and I try to get in a hike or two to go commune with nature. So that's what I've been doing in the past 3 years. Also spending a lot of time in contemplation. Also discovering that my 33, almost 34, well, she is 34 now, year-old daughter decided to become non-binary, and is partnered with a trans person who is on the in the process of becoming male. For a person who grew up in downtown Atlanta in a very conservative nature, whose father was a Baptist minister, this all has become a very challenging process. I think when I was 11, that I was a mistaken zygote. You might not know that phrase unless you've read Clarissa Pinkola Estes. She thinks that there are a lot of us around. I remember asking questions at 11. Why doesn't God speak to people anymore? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? I couldn't wear skirts on Sunday, except pants on Sunday. I couldn't dance. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. And so when I got to college, boy, did I make up for lost time. And then I followed the pattern and married a minister. And we went to seminary, a Baptist seminary, and the first thing we started to do was ask questions like, was there really a virgin birth? What's the purpose of prayer? We ask all of those questions in a Baptist setting. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I even knew that there was a place like Unitarian Universalist churches. So when I found Unitarian Universalism in 1984, it was like, wow, I think I found home. But when you've been there for 50 years, No, I'm not that old yet. Say 30 years, you start to miss a little bit of that. So I've been recovering some of my filling in the holes of the things that I missed. Also, conservative neighborhood that I grew up in, my house was less than a mile from Lester Maddox's restaurant, the Pickerick. And so one day, my best friend, Patsy, called me and she said, something's going on at the Pickerick. Get your bike and meet me at the alley. And we drove our bicycles down as close as we could get to the Pickerick. And I literally watched Lester Maddox go to his storage unit, get an axe handle, and run into the Pickerick. Now, I didn't know what he did with that axe handle once he got inside. But I knew it was wrong because I heard on the news that there were black students, and they were seminary students, folks, black students sitting and asking for a meal, and they were going to pay. Another clue that I was a mistaken zygote. I was on their side, not Lester's. And so that led me to working during college on what they called play lots. And I worked as a play lot director in Harris Homes. You may not know where that is, but it's in the West End. And it's public housing. I served 300 children per day lunches. Back then in 1967, 68, there was a public funding for serving lunches to poor families on a daily basis. And part of my job as the play lot director was feeding those children. I also had an 18 and under softball team that won the Atlanta championship that year, and I put all 9 of those 13 to 18-year-olds in my VW Bug to take them to ball games. They were all black. I was a white lady who took 9 huge black boys to ball games all over the city. I was not looked upon fondly. But these were things that I was called to do because I saw the need. I lived in a community that did not have air conditioning. One thing we did have was front porches. Therefore, and the other thing we didn't have was more than one car. So when somebody was working or somebody had a meeting to go to, you had to walk or ride the bus. So you knew everybody in the neighborhood because somebody was always walking up and down the street, and you're on the front porch when it's hot because you can't stand to stay inside. And so we knew one another. There was community. We knew who was sick. We knew who was getting married. We played together. I came home from school. I changed clothes. I stayed outside until it was dark or till Mother called me home. And the way she called me home was, Kathleen Elizabeth Tomlin, come home now. And you could hear her for blocks. But we were a community. I fear we're losing that part of our lives. I live in a community now that I've lived in for 5 years. I know the name of the woman who lives on the right side of me. I know no one else in my neighborhood. I've tried. I've introduced myself. Hey, how are you? Having a nice day? Yeah. And they go and they close their doors. And so I want to, I guess, ask you today to take a look at what we're doing to our community, our sense of being community, our sense of being together. And if you feel a call to make a change to do that work, do something about it. I did feel that call. And it happened in a series of, oh, by the way, I have a watch that I bought just for, looking at so that I knew how long I had been doing things. And I couldn't find it this morning. So somebody give me or what is it It's okay. In June, our 2.5-year postponed visit to to Ireland happened. Did you know that almost everywhere except for Dublin and Belfast, there is no building in Ireland that's more than 4 stories tall? In the roads, when bushes get too close to the roads, well, and that doesn't take much because the roads are really narrow there. Trust me, I drove. They don't come in with one of those whack machines and just go like the orcs do here. They go in and they trim the limbs so that there's an arc over the road. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I felt like I was in an outdoor cathedral the whole time I was there. There are small villages, there are small towns, and you can feel the camaraderie and the community that happens there. There are people that are really wealthy, but a more majority of the people are middle class, and if there are poor people, those people take care of the poor. They work together. I came home feeling a new sense of need for that kind of community. Then in early July, Barry took me to West Virginia. I had never been to West Virginia in my life. So when we went under the big mountain from Virginia and ended up on the other side into West Virginia, we started on about a 20-mile drive through mining towns, one after another. They all looked alike. They all were within, I would say less than a mile on either side of the road. Those were the mining towns, and then there were mountains on either side. The further I got, the more I cried, because the mines are shut down. The stores are closed. Nothing is left there except the people and their houses. They can't rebuild because the mines own the land and they won't let them rebuild their houses. They can fix them up, but they can't rebuild them. And so my heart was broken for the people there. There are programs to, redirect them vocationally, but the redirections were to help the mines close out what they were doing. And so now they don't need dump trucks, and they don't need cement layers, and they don't need this, and they don't need that. And what are the people to do? Oh, they have to leave their country. These are people who have lived there for hundreds of years, and yet, where are they going to go? They can't sell their property And where are they going to be able to afford to live because housing is out of control? So Barry successfully made me, what's that word? The person that doesn't do well anymore in society. A heretic? No. Yeah, there we go. Well, I was mad when I got home. And then 2 days after we got back, there was a ginormous flood in Troublesome Creek. And people, it happened in the middle of the night. People had no way to prepare for it. Hundreds of people died. They all lost their homes. Mobile homes were sent a mile down the road. And I said, Barry, I got to do something. What can we do? Well, he had a colleague who lived up near Troublesome Creek. So we contacted Adam and said, what can we do? And Adam sent us a list of things that they needed immediately. Push brooms, mold remediation, food, stuff like that. So we called everybody we knew and said, please, if you can give us some of these things, we're going to make a trip up there next week. I had never done anything like this in my life, I promise you. Within 5 days, between Barry in Dahlonega and Kathy in Woodstock, we had gathered materials to fill up his Subaru and $3,000 in cash. And we drove to Troublesome Creek. And when the elementary school that we were taking it to, when we called her and said, we're here, tell us how to get to the school, she said, well, the road's kind of ripply because the water came over it. Be careful. I had no idea what ripply meant. We're going, blah, 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 and I said, I'm going in the creek any minute. But we made it, and we provided lots of food for those people, and I appreciate the gifts that came from members of this congregation. And we got to the school, and she said, school starts in 3 weeks. Now, I don't know what we're going to do. They lost 5 children from their school, out of a school of 226. They lost 5 children. And one of the teachers, my heart went out to her. She said, within 24 hours, I knew where every family in this school was and what their conditions were. And that's the way the people in eastern Kentucky survive. They know one another. They care for one another. They are community. And so in my head, I'm thinking, I know that we reached some people, but I bet we could go back and do a school drive, and we could get school supplies for all these kids that are sleeping in tents, literally sleeping in tents, because their homes are no longer on their land. So I came back, I started an Amazon list, and people from all over the United States now started sending stuff. We were able, in 10 days this time, to get enough school supplies so that each of the 226 children in that school had enough school supplies for the entire school year. And Barry and I took them up there. And the faces on those teachers was enough to lift me up for at least 3 or 4 years. I tell you those 2 stories not for you to say, oh, that was so special, Kathy. But I tell you that because that's the way I responded to something that was calling me in my heart. and how it was something that was preparing me for that moment. You can call it what you will, but that prepared me for that moment. And I became part of their community as a result of one-on-one seeing them, getting to know them, frequently emailing with members of that faculty, even to today, knowing that there are still people living in tents, trying to help people get furniture, trying to help people understand that FEMA's only going to give them $5,000 for their trailer, which won't replace a $50,000 trailer. And so there's so much to be done in the world. Yes, I appreciate people who give monetary donations. Yes, I appreciate people who put up signs and hold them and demonstrate. Yes, I appreciate the work that is done, but until you can face to face get to know someone in need, you are not truly making a difference in your community. And that's what we need to do more of in order to be prepared for what's coming. We know what's happening in Florida. It's heartbreaking. And had I not had the experience with my own daughter, I would not know the deep pain. Had I not known, working at Susie, a trans 12-year-old who doesn't currently, living in Florida, have a place to go to the bathroom in her school. She has to go to the bathroom right before she goes to school, and she cannot go to the bathroom until she gets home because her school principal will not allow her to go to either bathroom now because she's on hormone replacement therapy. She doesn't have a place. There is no place for her. Now, the only thing I can do long distance is write to her and say, I love you. There are people in jail today who were at Cop City who were only there because they truly believe that building that is going to disrupt the environmental chaos that will happen in South Atlanta if that goes through. They're scared. They don't know what to do. They've never been in jail before. They are not terrorists. The only thing I can do is write them letters and hope that they get some paper to write me back. But there are little things you can do to connect one-on-one to people who need you. And making that connection makes all the difference in the world. Now, that might mean that you simplify your life. That might mean that some of the things that you value change. I know it has made a big change in mine. And I'm not preaching to you. I'm just asking you to consider some of the things that might happen to you if you open your hearts.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy.
Am I through?
Yes.
Oh. You're telling me I've been too long. Okay, good. I have some more, and we can do some more in sermon talk back. Okay, cool. I want to hear this walk a mile. These are the words of Amanda Gorman. May this be the day we come together. Mourning, we come to mend. Withered, we come to weather. Torn, we come to mend. Altered, we come to better. Tethered by this year of yearning, we are learning that though we weren't ready for this, we have been readied by it. We steadily vow that no matter how we are weighted down, we must always pave a way forward. This hope is our door, our portal. Even if we never got back to normal, someday we can venture beyond it, to love the known and take the first steps. So let us not return to what was normal, but reach toward what is next. Come, look up with kindness yet, for even solace can be sourced from sorrow. We remember, not just for the sake of yesterday, but to take on tomorrow.